This is really a live feed. That's how you know.
Hi, I'm Janelle Pizarro.
I'm Frederick Philip Von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with people behind the technology
That love what they do and do tech good.
Doing tech.
I love this. Hi.
It's so great to have you on the show. We spoke once a long time ago, and it was just me. I think a few people were sick at the time. But it's great to have you on actually live and in person.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. We did like a video chat.
Yeah. Remember, I was able to do your intro, the rap intro.
Oh yes,
So
you were the
Mama
first
said-
person who's ever written a song for me. That was amazing. Yeah, that was good.
I thought I'd bring it. Yeah, I love the ukulele. So, are you still doing those intros?
I am. So what he's talking about is my
Please.
my podcast I do every other week. It's called Tools Day. I do ukulele intros as like the intro music because we don't have intro music. So I just like write a song about whatever the topic is about that week. And it's been going on for a while now. I guess I've been playing the ukulele now for, I guess, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
A year and a half, not that long. I don't know. Time flies.
Yeah, I like how you guys were like, oh yeah, we'll get an intro eventually, but we're just gonna do this in the meantime, and that's became a character of the show.
Yeah, and that started before I learned how to play ukulele. So I would just sing songs because the podcast is 3 years old this month.
Wow.
In a week or two, and so I would just sing songs really badly, and I'm okay with it. No, really, it's bad, but it's funny. That's what makes it good, I think.
You ever think about putting out like a little side album? A few songs.
For sure not. It's just that's not my thing.
What about like Yuna's greatest hits, like a little bit of like funny
I think
songs?
I'm artistically talented, but for sure not in like any musical sense.
I think you got the voice. I think you could do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So people know you from Tools Day. They know you from your new YouTube channel, The Markup Artist, which I really enjoy.
That recently. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you mind telling our audience a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I work at Bustle Digital Group. I'm the director of product design, and Bustle Digital Group is a digital media company, and we currently run the sites of Bustle, Romper, Elite Daily, The Zoe Report, and we're going to be relaunching Gawker soon. That's like a public thing.
Wow.
So that's been a fun challenge because we're like constantly doing a variety of like internal products and also revamping websites. On the side, like you mentioned, I have the podcast. I do a lot of side projects. I'm working on a new side project right now involving Houdini, CSS Houdini. I do this YouTube channel, which is about fashion and tech. I do an Instagram. I have an Instagram account called Dev Doodles where I do illustrations of web development concepts, like just little drawings, like how to remember what the spread operator is and stuff like that. And yeah, I just have a lot. I don't know. That's some of the stuff. I probably can't think of the rest.
Those are my favorite. I love them. I love like looking at them and like I saw your stuff via CodePen. I love CodePen. And then like, linking towards you like the Google hole, right? And like seeing like, oh, okay, well here's how you do this sliding thing, right? And you're like, it's literally 2 pictures and it's like, how does I wish I could draw that beautifully in 5 seconds. It's so beautiful. It's so informative.
It's been a challenge because like right now I'll read something and then I'll try to illustrate it just like as a mnemonic for me to remember it, but then also to teach other people. So like the symbol data type primitive in JavaScript, like I don't really know how to illustrate that, but I need to come up with a way to illustrate it because this week I decided to do data types in JavaScript.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I'll figure it out. It's hard to illustrate. But it just happens. Yeah.
Well, I'd imagine it's also the same kind of issue where it's hard to come up with a song for a topic that you're going to do on your show.
That's actually really easy for me.
What?
Yeah, I make up all the songs like within 30 minutes of the show starting, just right before.
No, I'd be so panicked.
It's just like rhyming React with something else. I don't know. Like React, take it back. That rhymes well enough, something like that. And making like that into a sentence structure. And then, I don't know, like you just pick 4 chords, you can make a song out of it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, I still think you could put out a little album like that.
So tell us about what your talk was about today.
Yeah, and it's called Why Design Systems Fail.
Yeah, so that was what my talk was about. It was about design systems. It was about I personally have worked in a few companies and built a few different design systems, and I've seen them be used at various levels of integration and completion into the company, having engineers use them. So the talk is about how to ensure that people are using your design system, how to make sure it's successful, how to make sure it has longevity, and a lot of that is about people ops, but also the way that you architect it and like how you sell the design system, how you like your rollout plan. Like there's so many things that are involved in design systems that aren't just like how you build a component.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what it was about.
Oh, nifty. So there were a lot of like this. This was one of the only talks I was able to see thus far. There was a lot of like.
I feel honored.
It's because I'm late, girl. Like, yeah, it was really, really. What I really enjoyed about it is that you kind of broke everything down. So can you kind of give us some of those 10 steps that you had of like kind of how to make a successful design system happen, or maybe not?
Yeah, so it starts with your goal setting or making a hypothesis, and that's sort of the reason why you want to build a design system, because if you don't have a reason to do it, then you shouldn't be doing it. So that reason could be making a more performant site, decreasing accessibility bugs, decreasing code cruft, decreasing like inconsistencies in the UI. Like there's a lot of different things that you can choose to start with. The next step would be to analyze your entire current UI. So there's a lot of different tools that I shared about that, like WebAIM, Wave. These are like accessibility tools. There's CSS Stats, which is a great website for analyzing your CSS performance if you want to reduce CSS cruft size. There's I shared another one, but I don't remember off the top of my head what it was. But so you get the data, you get your like before, and then you can start working with that data to then convince whoever needs to be convinced that a design system is something to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the talk is about how this investment is so crucial to the success of a design system, because if you don't have support from the company, then you can't be like a lone advocate for a design system. And so you use that to get buy-in from stakeholders, from project management, from design and development, so that everyone's like working together, like forming a team. From there, you kind of start with what you have. So looking at all the colors that you have, like what you want to break down into your core primitives. Like if you have 5 shades of blue, what's the key shade of blue? What is the single source of truth? So then cutting out all the rest, like we had like 70 grays, like literally 76 different gray values in a project I had worked on. So we did a workshop, cut all those down to 5, picked and chose where the other values fell under, started building things out that way. You can do that with button types and typography for like all your headers. You could do it for all the different components that are involved, and then start building that back up from the ground up. So starting with like your smaller components like buttons, where those live, and then pulling that into larger components that are like complex UI elements. And then from there, like iterating, testing, making sure that communication is really strong throughout the team. Versioning is something that I talked about, which is really, really, really important in design systems. And then like keeping your users, who are your engineers in your company, informed with what you've been doing, so the progress you've made, and then how you're continually communicating between them and your designers, developers. It's like a process. It's like a life cycle. I should draw a diagram. I didn't have one for that.
So you said versioning. Like how does that come into play? How do you, once you have a version, how does that get pushed out and make everyone else aware of, hey, you know what, there's been an update?
That's a good question. And it really depends on how big your company is. That'll determine how often people have to keep up to date with that version. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by versioning is like if you have a version of your design system that's like version like 1.2, and you update the button component, and that button component is now 50 pixels wide instead of 100 pixels wide. I don't know, I'm making these numbers up. So now you could potentially have breaking changes in UIs of people who have the previous version.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to version things, so people can include your design system as a module. And then when they're ready, you can announce there's an update. They can take their time and make their own timelines for updating to the new version of the design system to keep up to date visually. And that version can also coincide with your like sketch assets. If you have design assets that align with that versioning system, then you can have like a visual system that is aligned with like your semantically versioned module system for your design system. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely it did. Yeah.
Well, how do you keep track of those versions, right? Is it part of the actual ecosystem as a whole, or is it, like a Post-it note, or what? How do you kind of keep track of that?
I like the Post-it note.
Post-it notes for passwords. Just kidding.
Definitely.
So GitHub is a great tool for that because you can release things on GitHub and every release gets versioned.
Mm-hmm.
So what we had was a hook that when our version got released on GitHub, then that was also something that triggered a build tool to build out. We had these static assets that was like another way to use our design system, and that was at DigitalOcean. So having that GitHub like versioning system was kind of like the source of truth for what updates were made. It lets you comment in there and then use those assets. Like you republish it to NPM.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we could create static assets when we push that system.
So would you say keeping the design system and the product itself separate is probably the best kind of way to do that, to make sure that the system itself has its own version?
I think that's the best idea because your product could grow and evolve and grow outside the system. So usually we don't have all of our product within one code base, like within a single repo. So having a separate repo for your design system, or it doesn't even have to be a repo, but just if you have just a way that you're separating your assets, like your projects, then you should separate your design system just like you separate the other projects.
Got it.
So if your other projects are in different repos, your design system should be in its own repo. If your projects are in like a mono repo, which is how we build front end now at my current job, which is new for me and interesting, and I really like it, then the design system would be like its own folder within that, which is kind of like a mini repo within a bigger project.
Yeah.
So however you have that organized. But at most places I've been at, it's been a pattern of separate repos for separate projects that kind of like feed into each other.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So is it a lot of times you'll have some kind of conflict where it might be not as easy for like a dev team to get on board, where you'll have a design team that says, I've created this and that's what it is. And, I got the C-levels behind me saying you do this. And there's not actually a discussion back and forth of what actually can we do to solve your pains? How do we alleviate that?
I think that's common in design systems, and it's frustrating for everyone, and it's something that we should try to avoid at all costs. I talked about this in my talk a bit, which was involving developers from the start so they feel like they're heard and getting their input. Also, getting them sort of on your side by showing them this is a product that will make their lives easier. Just kind of going from this perspective of my job is to make your life easier. How can I best do that? And then getting that insight to help to make decisions for the design system itself. It's hard because we have different metrics that we're being judged on, and that's like where you run into that conflict. Because if your job is like ship 10 features and someone else's job who works in design systems is like build a unified performant code base, then it might be that you're at odds. But if you can show that your product, which is a design system in this conversation, will make their life easier, will make their product work more efficiently, will make it look better without them having to put effort into it, then it will be beneficial for them and they'll kind of be on your side. That's kind of how you win.
Yeah.
So when do you not want to like have a design system?
I think that so I talked about this when I talked to, if cost of making that system is greater than the benefit, if you spending time on the design system is more costly in terms of getting clients or getting like features pushed out that are important and core to the company, and that design system is also not going to improve performance or consistency, that's when you run into this like state of, it might be fun to build a design system, but like, I mean, look at your core metrics, look at your income from like what the company is making. A design system I think the issue with design systems is like you run into this argument of there's no way to show its value up front. Like you're not going to see that monetary value until later on when it's an efficient system. So I think that we heard this like overarching like everyone should have a design system tone be ringing. That's not necessarily true, but I do think that in a lot of cases it helps. And there are some cases in which it might not be the right solution for your team at the time. And that's when you have to kind of evaluate if you need one. I think most teams could definitely use one, but not always. And that's a cost benefit analysis thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Brad was also talking about maintaining, the design system as a whole. Do you think that could also play into effect on whether or not you need it? Like, what if there's only 1 or 2 people who are dedicated to that task, and you have a team of 15 people, and that's too many people?
Right.
Yeah.
Brad gave a great talk also about design systems. It was interesting. So at this conference we had 3, and the coolest part was when Brad asked, like, who here works in design systems? Like, almost 2/3 of the audience raised their hands. So it's like, wow, this is now how we're designing in the future. And there was a lot of people who worked at corporations here, which of course need a design system because their product is pretty big and grows.
Yeah.
But I think that with maintenance, it is another argument for having one because the cost of maintenance decreases over time.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's important to still have people on the design system keeping it up to date and current, and that's kind of why they fall out of hand. But the cost of maintenance will always be there. It'll just be decrease over time, whereas the benefits stay consistent or even increase because you're ensuring accessibility, performance of your code base, UI, like continuity and consistency. You're making it easier for devs to prototype assets, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So what kind of frameworks have you built design systems in besides just React?
I have spun up my own frameworks for most things. And by that, I mean not JavaScript frameworks, but UI frameworks for a design system. So, I mean, it sounds crazy as it sounds. It's just making sure that you can put out the most performant, smallest code base, whatever, that fits into the system that you're building within. The example I was giving during my talk was we were working within a system that was Ember-based, but also we had to support vanilla JavaScript because it was just microsites. So we just built a framework that was surrounding Sass, like the CSS Sass preprocessor, and we used that as a basis for extending our components. We had custom functions in there. We had a utility for responsive design with media queries without having to write media queries. They were just part of the class. I think that's kind of making your own design system framework.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then, I've worked with React-based systems, but it's a whole different ballgame there because you can use CSS and JS. I really like CSS modules, and I use that at work now. And it lets you write your CSS alongside your JavaScript in either the same file or next to it, and it pulls it in. That way it makes sure that you're not including any extra code on your site. There's so many different ways to do this that you could talk forever about it, but it's really just about what the user's code base lives in and if they want to keep it there or they want to do with that.
Yeah, I love that you're able to kind of customize it to your own needs and to the business needs as well, which is pretty awesome. So it's really cool that you can create a whole kind of ecosystem on your own.
That's a fun part of development.
Yeah.
You can build anything.
That's
JavaScript
really cool.
runs on robots these days. You can build a robo-dog in Java, in web code.
That's an actual thing.
It's so...
A robo-dog?
Well, I mean, you can make little helicopters. That's
thing. That's true. Good point. Yeah, why not?
You can make a little dog that walks around by using JavaScript, importing it through Johnny 5 into Arduino or whatever you want to use.
Wow, I love little dogs. So.
Yeah. I don't think I'm skilled enough in that field to do it, but theoretically, it's a possibility. So.
You can write a song about it.
A song about it?
I don't know. One of the cool little songs.
Maybe. Yeah. That's probably all I can do.
That's cool. So what would you tell somebody that, obviously we got some people that can't make the conference with work or whatnot. What would you like to tell some of our audience, some of the takeaways or some of the things about your talk?
I think that we covered a lot of it here. I think the biggest thing is getting support. Buy-in, good communication is really important. Making a strong, scalable architecture that you can grow from, making accessibility something that you think about from the start, because it definitely scales with your design system as more people use it, and thinking about how you can have a cohesive discussion around the system with whoever you need to. There's a lot of moving parts to design systems, but most of it is people ops. It's not just design or development, it's people, and it's how you work together with those people.
Well said. Excellent. Well, Una, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Una
Thanks for
Kravets,
having
everybody.
me.
And stay tuned. We'll have a lot more coming up. Thanks, guys.